Well, welcome everyone. I'm absolutely delighted that we have with us here a dear student and friend and colleague, Hans Friend from Norway. As Hannah will tell us later, she studied for 2 years in St. Vidima's Seminary when her husband was studying in the seminary. She was studying under Anne Margaretich, and then she spent 3 years studying with me at the King's Foundation School of Traditional Arts, 3-year part-time icon course. At the moment, she's doing a doctorate, again with the King's Foundation, on designing and making an icon screen for a parish church, drawing on the Norwegian tradition. And that's particularly what I wanted to concentrate on today. The whole theme of these podcasts that I do is doing whatever is necessary to raise the quality of liturgical art, not just the craftsmanship, but the intellectual substance of it, the liturgical substance, this whole balance of rooting in iconography in place and in culture, but also in the timeless quality of good liturgical art, which is to reflect heavenly worship, because in the end, liturgy on earth is participation in heavenly worship. So I'm very interested in this incarnational element of the union of place and heaven. So welcome, Hannah. It's a joy to
Thank you
see
so
you
much.
again.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I understand that your doctorate is on designing and making and painting the icons for this icon screen for your local church, because your husband's the parish priest of this church. So perhaps you could talk through us why you chose the subject, the process you're using, the reasons, and the theology behind your approach. So let's start on the actual doctorate first, then we can branch into other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's my theme, the unification of the balance between the universality of the church and the sacred space in the Orthodox tradition, and how that can be united with the cultural context that I find myself in, which is Norway. And to go all the way back for me, that started with well, when my husband and I first encountered the Orthodox Church in Norway, this was 17, 18 years ago, and it was not, the church was not very well known. It was a very, very tiny community, uh, and there was a lot of questions to why we wanted to convert to something that was perceived as foreign and unfamiliar and strange and not belonging, in a sense, in Norway. It was something seen as something Russian or Greek, and why would you want to be a part of that as a Norwegian? And I think the situation has changed a lot now, where the church is much more familiar, and it's in Norway it's the fastest growing Christian group is the Orthodox Church. So the
So how many
situation is
people
very.
are there in your parish at the moment, just to give us a taste of growth? And
Yeah, so
how did
we
it start and what number is there now?
yeah, we started out with just a handful. It was just our family and another family, really, and a couple of more. And then so 12, 13 people. And then now we're between 50 and 60 on a regular Sunday. Yeah.
And that's
So
fairly
it's
typical in other Orthodox parishes in Norway.
yeah, I think a lot of them are seeing a growth, especially within the last few years. There's been a shift after COVID that we didn't in the beginning. It was kind of slow, so if someone showed up, we were very excited. Someone found us, but now there's been new people coming every weekend for a year and a half at least. So yeah, so but I think that's happening in a lot of places all over the world, which is very exciting. Um,
Yeah,
so,
that's the
but when we,
context anyway. So carry on. I interrupted you.
that's fine. Yeah, so this kind of that I think that sense of in a way, when we first started out, even though it was an external more than an internal questioning, it was sort of like our identities as Norwegians were questioned in a sense. And I think that stuck with me, that sense of not belonging in a way. And so we wanted to, my husband is a priest, and we came back to build a community that is rooted here and is a natural part. And then, so when I started doing iconography, this idea sort of grew in me that I also wanted to explore if I could make that connection visually, that sense of, you know, a lot of people come to the Orthodox Church and they describe it as coming home spiritually, but that also it could be a coming home visually, or that the visual expression could underscore that sense of coming home. So that was sort of my starting point, so to speak. And then I think it's and I think that the visual expression is a way that we can, or the visual expression of culture is a way that we can give that what is beautiful back to God, just as we take that wheat and grain and by the fruit of our labors make it into wine and bread and offer it to God, and he gives it back to us in the Eucharist. And in the same way we can use what's beautiful and our own efforts and offer that to God in a very concrete visual way as well. So yeah, so that was kind of the starting point for my thinking around this. And then and so yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm halfway now through my PhD and looking at how I can incorporate all of these elements that I've researched over the last few years into the icon screen, but also into the sacred space in general, because it kind of not just the screen, but it flows out into the whole space.
Yeah, so there's just two questions in my mind. Perhaps you could just briefly explain for our listeners the quite unique nature of the doctorate that the King's Foundation School has, because it's very much rooted in practice, isn't it? It's not just a theory, it's not just written. And then perhaps you could speak a bit about and describe the actual church that you use, and whether or not you hope that your principles being applied to the icon screen can be applied to the larger church interior. I presume it's not a purpose-built church. So perhaps those two things first.
Yeah, so at the School of Traditional Arts, there's the PhD program. It is very unique because you use art practice as research. So it's really what you paint and make, and that's the main focus. But then, of course, there's a lot of reading and writing and reflection that goes hand in hand with that. So it's a very interesting approach, and it does become very personal in a sense, because it's also the nature of, I'm doing it for our church and as the Matushka of the church, so it's everything is kind of ingrained in each other in that sense. And it's and you asked about the church building in itself. So we were able to last year to purchase a building. We've been nomads for 7-8 years, and so that was it was a long story how that came about, but it was incredible. So now we have our own space. It's a beautiful church, but it's also a whole building where there's a student dorm. So if there's any international students who want to come and live above an Orthodox church, it's an Orthodox community as a student home as well. And there's commercial space that we can rent out. So it's really an incredible space. It's an old prayer house, which is very a common thing in Norway. It's sort of a low church Lutheran congregational space. So we're but it has tall ceilings and stained windows, and it's a very it's a great slate to start with.
Perhaps you can send photographs of that, and we can put them up when we publish the podcast.
Definitely, yeah.
So do you think it has potential to be embellished more in an Orthodox way, but on the other hand also reflecting Norwegian culture? Or will you just leave it as it is apart from putting icons on the wall? What are your larger ambitions for it?
Yeah, well, we're starting. There's some very practical things of changing something like making the doing some changes to the ceiling so it's more there's more resonance, and changing the floor. There's certain things like that that needs to be done from a very practical point of view. It already has kind of a three division, sort of a narthex, but the and an altar area. So it's yes, so but there will be changes made along the way, but the icon screen will be the main feature that we'll start with, and then also I'm not sure about wall paintings yet, if we'll do that or have panel icons as well on the wall, but yeah.
Are you acquainted with Abhasera Bancheva's work, particularly on Hagia Sophia? If not, I think you ought to, because she's, I wouldn't say unique, but one of the forerunners,
Yes.
yeah, of integrating all the different elements that have hitherto been studied too independently. In other words, the acoustics, even the choice of marble flooring in Hagia Sophia, the way light operates, all these things. She's sort of approaching as a scholar and an art historian, but combining it with theology and musicology and hymnography, how all these things come together, and why these particular materials are chosen. It's a very holistic approach, really. But yeah, do study her, and do some good
Yeah,
podcasts.
yeah. No, I have. Yes,
You have
I
come across
am.
guys. Okay.
I've heard about. Yes,
So
yeah. No, I think, and
we-
we're
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, no, we are seeing it more, or the sacred space as a whole, and how it
Yeah.
will work with just something like with the music, how the sound carries, and how the light comes in, and all of these, um, yeah, all of those things, and also seeing how those. I'm looking at, for instance, one of the things that I want to incorporate is textiles, and looking at how I can do that in the space, not necessarily on the icon screen, maybe the veil, but also incorporating it in the room itself, for instance, as a small kind of yeah, contribution to that.
I'm more acquainted with the architectural and carved work of Norway, but is there quite a strong tradition of old fabric work in Norway, embroidery or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is. I mean, there is a tradition of tapestries, and it was used a lot in the churches,
Hmm.
more so than, or I don't know if it's more than iconography, but it was used as iconography, like they on the walls of the churches. There's not a lot of remnants of that, but we have also other, like this area in Bergen, where we're on the west coast. There's a embroidery called Hardangersøm, which is very well known in the country as a whole. It's a white on white geometrical kind of embroidery that's used very widely, and is very loved and recognized. So I want to use that on the analogion and on the altar table as well.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so it's, yeah.
In your introduction, you alluded to the benefit psychologically of feeling you're not a foreigner in your own country, being Orthodox. So there's the pastoral, if you like, the psychological advantage of actively incorporating elements of one's culture in one's liturgy. But perhaps you could give a theological basis for that. Why is it important, apart from just sort of helping us feel at home?
Yeah. No, I think it is an expression of the mystery of the incarnation as well. I think that's kind of the main theological argument, in a sense, that God became man in one place and in one time, but is also incarnate in every place and every time, where Christ is born in our hearts, or He's formed in us, as the Galatians say. So I think to use that, and the, like in the hymnography of the church, it's a lot of today. It's very present, the language. Today Christ is born, today He's hanging on the tree. And so I think that the visual kind of expression of that is also underscoring that it's here and now. It's present, both in place in time.
Mm.
I think is important, and also uh, the symbolism of the icon screen. That's my primary subject, and the symbolism of the screen as a meeting place between heaven and earth, and between the visible and invisible, between the hidden creator and how he has revealed himself to his creation. So it's fitting to me that there's also a unification of universal and the particular in that kind of, that marks that boundary. So it's everything comes together in a sense in that mediator.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing about the icon, and I suppose, as you've suggested in the icon screen, that images both reveal and conceal. They're both like and unlike. Saint John of Damascus, this emphasized this, that what differentiates the image from the prototype is that it's both like and unlike it. That's why not idolaters. If we said the icon is Peter or Paul, there'd be idolatry. But on the other hand, it is Peter and St. Paul in the sense that it partakes of them through being an image of them. So the screen both conceals and manifests, doesn't it? So this is this tension the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If one were to build a brand new church, Orthodox church in Norway, have you got any thoughts about what form that might take? Because it's bound to happen sooner or later. You know, that someone comes along with lots of money, or highly skilled craftspeople come along and want to help. So have you got any thoughts about what form that might take?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do sometimes, if people bring it up, they always want to have a stave church. That's
I think. Yeah. And do you
that's
think that would be suitable for the Orthodox liturgy? Because they started, as I understand, about the 12th century. Is that right? 12th,
yeah,
13th
yeah,
century. So what are your
yeah,
thoughts about if one could design a new stave church and build it more or less as an old one? Would that be suitable? What are your thoughts?
yeah. I think in a way, yeah, I think it would be. I think it would be suitable, and yes, it might be um difficult to do, but I think there's it's kind of, in a way, it's the closest thing. I mean, there's stone churches as well from that time, but it feels like it's the closest time we have the before the schism of the churches that were once Orthodox as well, you know. So it's sort of, there's this kind of timeless and this yeah, relationship with the stave churches for Orthodox as well. But I yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting. I haven't really thought about like what would be the most appropriate church, if we, because it feels like it's so
Yeah.
far away. To
It might be sooner than you think. Who knows?
just happy with this building we got. That
Yeah, sounds amazing. Yeah. I did work for a church in Amsterdam, and they, very similarly to you, actually bought a monastery. So it wasn't just the building, it was all the rooms, the dormitories, but it was a school as well as a monastery. And it's such a blessing to a parish to have all these spaces for the liturgy after the liturgy, as it were. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
amazing.
yeah. No, you would definitely need some additional, because the stave churches are generally quite small, so you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to. But it's,
Um,
yeah, it's
th- Sorry, carry on.
no, go ahead.
Mm. Yeah, though we'll put up proper images after our interview so that our viewers can see a nice image of it. Perhaps you could lift up the image that you've drawn of the icon screen you designed and explain to us a few elements of it that are particularly Norwegian. Because I'm really
Yeah.
interested in how you progressed with your doctorate, and so instead of talking in theory, perhaps you could talk us through some of the
Yeah,
particular elements
yeah,
of
the one that
the
I
stage.
have here.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna, let's see if this works. So this is a working let me see if I can explain this. This is a working drawing I'm working on right now. It's kind of, it's a little bit blurred and not very easy to see in a sense, but I've used the stave churches for my inspiration, mainly in the, you see the columns going up all the way here. That's very kind of a very prominent features, very strong. Well, the stave churches come from the staves, and the columns are very prominent features. Also, arches and you can't probably not see it very well in the drawing, but I have other drawings of it as well. These kind of 3 leaves coming out.
Yes.
And this is a more elaborate version of that I found a drawing of from altar divide in a stave church that's no longer existent, but it's sort of the closest thing that we have to an icon screen. So it's a very kind of simple element, but it's
Immediately
very
recognizable by Norwegians.
efficient and very recognizable. Yes. And then here it's marked very softly, but these will be carved all around here with the festal icons on top, and then columns going up here again. The capitals will be carved as well, at least these ones, perhaps the smaller ones. And there's I call it see-through carving. That's probably not the technical term for it, but
lattice work, as it were.
Yes, on the doors and over the deacon doors, because I want there to be a lot of what I've been looking at is also has to do with proportions and in relation to the icon screen as a frame in itself, and how it relates to the icons, how much space is given to the icons and how much space is given to the frame, and the size of it, the proportions according to the room, and whether it is closed off or open, and I want there to be openness, so it's this is as wide, but it's also, it has to be in accordance with the room, so it's sort of, there's natural limitations to certain things, but I want it to be kind of have an openness to it, so it's a kind of boundary more than a wall that closes off, but it's a mediator that closes off but also opens up, is the idea.
Oh, thank you for showing us that. Good. So I'll show an image of it on the final video. Good. So are there any particular churches with details you're going to draw upon? So you mentioned, for example, the carved epistyles, the carved capitals, and the 3-leafed motif. Are there any particular churches you're going to draw from of those? And we can show images of those.
Yeah, well, the 3 leaves on the arches you find in a lot of state churches will have them. I can send you examples of it, and also the carved capitals. And the other type of carving it won't be from one particular church, but it will be kind of drawing inspiration from different ones. And I've seen, for instance, one of those features that's used a lot across different media when it comes to traditional arts, both in decorative painting called rosemaling, and in embroidery and in wood carving, is the acanthus, which is not a Norwegian plant by any means, but it's used all over the world and in a lot of Orthodox churches already. And when it came to Norway, it came kind of late, but then it just didn't leave. So it's used. It's a very kind of recognizable feature. Even in the stave churches, you see more a stylized version of it.
Have you got an idea when that happened and how and why it seemed to strike a chord? I mean, it is unusual that a plant like that, which has got nothing to do with Norway, takes off. Have you got any theories about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it was influenced from Europe probably at some point. It kind of bloomed with the Baroque period as well, and kind of stuck. And I think when the kind of trends in Europe changed more quickly, because we were so isolated and so we were slow to get trends, but also slow to dispatch them. So we kind of just stayed on. So yeah, so I think it won't be the most, it will be sort of more of a stylized form of it, I think. So it's more kind of connected to it has more of a timeless feeling to, I think, it shouldn't be too ornate in a sense, but yeah, there are certain kind of elements that you can kind of trace through time and different media that's been very interesting. And also that it's seen as something Norwegian, but but it is very universal, and it is in a lot of places, which kind of strengthens that idea of unification of those two ideas. So
I suppose in the political and social realm, particularly at the moment, there's this tension between internationalism and nationalism. So I don't like to bring grubby politics into it, but there is this tension, isn't it? We want to feel we belong to the larger world, but on the other hand, our culture is unique, though it's a hybrid. Every culture is
yeah.
hybrid. So this is always tension, isn't there? So I suppose the acanthus is universal, but the Norwegian form of it is Norwegian. It's like
Yes,
when I've
and
done
it's
translating or interpretation, about translation, I realized that you're translating ideas, not transliterating. So you've got to get inside what you're translating and translate the idea, the content. So
yeah, yeah. And you want it to feel like it has, yeah, like you said, there's this tension, and you want people who are not Norwegian who come to also feel at home and to
mm,
feel that it's something recognizable for them as well. So I think it has to be both, and I think that's where the kind of the timelessness comes in too. Because if you use something from, like, if I've used rosemaling, which is a very kind of well-known technique of painting, decorative painting in Norway, but it's still used, but it was very widely used in the 1850s. So it would be sort of like you're making something that belongs to a different time in a sense, even though it's Norwegian, but it doesn't have that timeless quality to it. So you can
mm.
use inspiration and draw from it, but not kind of go all out
Well,
on
it's a bit
that
of a
one
pastiche.
thing.
It's becoming a pastiche of
Yes,
revival.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to capitals and the acanthus, a lot of studies been done in Hagia Sophia and other old churches, how they're aiming at the interpenetration of light and form. So a capital, and Hagia Sophia seems to have either invented or certainly developed the idea of a basket capital, so that it makes it look, basically it's a solid hunk, but it's got sort of like lacework. So it looks as though it's not really holding much of a mass at all, because it's like a basket, an open wee basket. And the canvas is a bit like that, because it's open, has lots of light and shadow. So it appears that this column, which is actually being an enormous load, actually isn't being much of a load. So it's as though light has penetrated everything and made it more translucent, but also a lot lighter. So I'm
Mm.
interested in what you're saying about your icon screen, that it's both solid, but also it has holes in it, so that you've got
Yeah.
light penetrating it. It conceals and reveals at the same time. Perhaps you could talk a bit about how important transfiguration is in Orthodox theology. In other words, this interaction of light and form, of creator and creation, and how this might have influenced your design. You've talked a bit about this sort of importance of the
Um,
screen. It both demarcates but unites.
yes, yeah. That it is this um, meeting place, and it goes. Yes, it goes back to I think with that we can know God in his energies, but not in his essence. So there's always something that's hidden and it's out of our sight, and we can't. Yes, and not something we can reach, but we can see him through his energies and what he does and his work in the world, and how that um, yes transforms. We see a transfigured world, how with God's light and spirit in everything. So, and every um matter matters, as you've said.
Yeah.
The material world and matter has the potential to hold that created the light of God. And so yeah, I don't
Mm.
know if that answers
Has that
the
has that
question.
influenced the choice of wood? I mean, what wood will you use, and will it be
Yeah,
this exposed wood or polychromed, or what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I did think about polychrome because there is kind of a tradition for that in a sense as well, but I am leaning towards using just the exposed wood, because we have such wood is the main building material in Norway for everything, because we have such a lot of it. And so it's I really like to have kind of the wood shine,
And
that
what
material.
timber will you use? What species?
So I'm probably going to use pine, because that is very widely used, but it's a nice, not too knotted, not pine, like it's thick, it's cut and glued in a way that you don't get all the nuts showing through. So it's very kind of um, quiet in a sense. And I'm working with an excellent carpenter and wood carver who does really beautiful work, and he suggested just leaving it untreated and let it kind of it will change color and darken over time, but
Right, yes.
yeah, and I like that idea of a lighter icon screen also because it's it's dark here for a lot of the year, and so the church gets quite dark, and so I think to bring in to not to be on the lighter side is it would work well. I think not to go too dark when it's already
Yeah.
darkness. Yeah.
I've noticed that softwoods that are grown in cold countries have a different quality altogether than softwoods that grow incredibly quickly. A famous pine is called Archangel pine because it came from Siberia through Archangel Port. So it's called Archangel because it came from Archangel, although came through Archangel. But I've noticed that the grain is just so close. Most of us tend to think of pine here as super quick growing. After 30 years, you cut it. And but this pine, and at the Hermitage where I used to live, there was a door made out of this, and it looked to me as though the grain was probably about 2 millimeters apart. So very, very slow grade, but it had a honey quality I've not seen before.
Yeah.
So in the Scots pine, I've looked at Scots pine quite a bit, and that's a slower growing pine, but beautiful honey color, which I just didn't want to touch. It was so gorgeous. So I presume
Yeah.
the Norwegian pines would be quite slow growing, and it's the grain quite close.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
It is, and it has a very beautiful quality to it, and I also think unstained, because sometimes it's stained and it gets this kind of yellowish color that's
Yeah.
not that great. So to keep it in its natural form, and it does, it has a really lovely quality, and it feels very kind of appropriate
Wonderful.
to use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my questions was materials and design, but also craftsmanship, because one can design wonderful things, but if you haven't got the craftsman to make it, then one is stuck. But you're just so blessed to have found both a good carpenter and a carver. Was that a difficult
Yes.
thing to find?
And it's the same person.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
does both. Yeah. No, yeah, it was well, he was recommended by a Serbian priest that we know, and that because he's done some work for them in their church, and so he recommended him, and I saw his work, and we went to visit him this summer, and so it was yeah, we were very fortunate to get in touch with him. There are people who, I mean, good carpenters and wood carvers in Norway, many places, but this one, yeah, we.
I'd be interested in the relationship between the designer of pencil and paper and the maker. Have you found that there's been a response from him which has adjusted your designs? You mentioned he was recommending just not treating it at
Yes,
all. Has there been any input from him saying, well, we can't really make that, or it'll be better to make it this way? Has there been any dialogue
yeah.
in that respect?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, because it is very different to, yeah, put it on paper. And I don't know how to, I wouldn't know how to actually make it. So there's a lot of those practical considerations that he came in and said that you need to change this a little bit, and this will make more sense to do it like this way, or yeah. So he's very good at he can see immediately what works, not
Okay.
just on paper, but what will work uh, on a big scale. And I plan also to make, before I finish the design completely, to make a one-to-one scale just in paper, like a
Right.
thick paper, just for my own sake, just to kind of see it in the space, and to see how that works, because it is a bit difficult to visualize one thing is on a big piece of paper, but to visualize what it will actually look like in the church. So
And you
I'll
mentioned earlier that the columns would be a bit further forward naturally. So I suppose a drawing is just two-dimensional, but you've got to make decisions about how deep will the columns will be, how far back will the icons be from the arches, etc. Interesting. Yeah. The
yeah.
columns, will they be cylindrical or flat? Or if they're cylindrical, will they be turned out? How will you make them if they're cylindrical?
Yeah, so it will probably be just a rounded that goes all the way,
Yeah.
or almost all the way around. But I am also considering having them. I found these drawings of columns from state churches that were in a sort of a cross shape, if that makes sense. That has kind of I'll send you pictures of it so you can see. That will also kind of emphasize the vertical line even more. So um, yeah, I might do that. It's kind of a I don't know how to yeah, I'll send you the picture so you can
Yeah.
see it. But yeah.
In a related subject, but a little bit different, some parishes, especially younger parishes, say, well, beauty is all very nice, but we can't afford it. What do you say to that? I mean, at what point have we just got to go for the practical solution and put the idea of beauty aside as a nice ideal? Or do you think it's possible, no matter what one's budget is, to introduce beauty, but just in a different way than you'd do it if you had a billionaire giving you all the money you needed? What are your thoughts about the practicalities and finances of beauty
Yeah.
and the importance it should be given?
Yeah, no, I think it's we've had to think very practically for a long time because we were in a rented space and had to set up and take down every Sunday. So we had that sort of um yes, very I think it's beautiful for what it was, but it was a kind of a minimal expression of what it could be, and that's what we had to do for a while, and that was okay. And then before I started the doctorate before we had the building, so I didn't know if I would have a space to design for. And for a while I looked at doing a temporary icon screen that was more not as makeshift as what we had, but not a full structure, but inspired by the one you have in Cambridge, for instance, where you can pull it out and it has yeah. So I think in a way you have to think about it as something that will gradually come, and that you start with something small and then but it can still be beautiful, but you kind of build on it as time goes on. And then we're going to start a fundraiser within the year now to pay for all of these things that we want to do with the sacred space, the icon screen and the space in itself. So um yeah, I think I think it should be uh given a very high priority, and not to say that that's something we'll do way down the line, but also to be practical about it in the sense that you can only uh, do what you can. But if it's a high priority in your mind, then you will find solutions that will still be beautiful, even though they're simple. And then,
That's a
yeah.
beautiful answer. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes I found this often myself, a limitation actually compels you to do something which is perhaps more beautiful than if I had all the money in the world. So I think
Mm,
limitations actually can be a portal to something more elegant.
yeah.
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 I've seen a lot of damage being done in parishes where just, well, in one case, a billionaire gave them all the money that they need and it lost some of its character.
Mm,
So yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
But related to that, I know that your husband studied to be a priest of Saint Phidemus. I know you've got an answer for him, but can you recall if there was any obligatory module on liturgical art? In other words, were priests trained how to, for example, brief an architect, or were they trained in the importance of beauty, or just functionally how to go about beautifying an existing church that isn't Orthodox? Um, was he trained in any way? I mean, he's got you, but most priests haven't got professional liturgical
Yeah.
artists to help. And why do you
Yeah.
think that they didn't have it if they didn't have it?
Yeah, I mean they did have courses on iconography, not the making of it, but the theory, like the iconology. Yeah, but I can't remember if they were mandatory or not, or if they were optional. But now there is a Sacred Arts Institute,
Yeah.
so I think it's become more and more kind of on the forefront as something that should should have um, importance. But um, yeah, I don't know. I would think that it's that it hasn't been enough of a focus, I would
Mm.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've done a bit of research in this, and as I half expected, I've not found any Catholic or Anglican seminaries in this country who've had
Mm.
anything like this. But to my surprise, I haven't found any Orthodox seminaries that have had it either.
Yeah.
But just on the principles of what makes for a successful liturgical church, the lighting, acoustics, etc., etc. I remember, to
Mm.
one American priest, and he was saying he's been to many purpose-built Orthodox churches, but none of them have had good acoustics. They just thought, well, put a dome in, put an arch in, and it's Orthodox. But I think we've lost so much of the technical expertise that the Byzantine and Russian churches had. And I think we're a bit naive about the skill required. So a
Yeah.
step forward would be just to instill in priests the importance of good liturgical art on the soul. The
Mm.
beautiful church just helps prayer. It's a practical thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, you've studied under two iconographers, myself and Anne. I quite often get approached by people saying, I'm interested in being a professional iconographer or taking it more seriously. How do I train? From your experience, what advice could you give to those who want to be involved, not just in painting panel icons, but just in liturgical art in general, perhaps as an architect or a wall painter or a carver? What advice would you give from your a total of 5 years studying in different ways?
Yeah. Well, if you want to, if you want to, but you don't know where to kind of where to start, in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, it finding someone who can teach you in some way.
Mhm.
I think um that's why I came to your course in England, because I didn't find that community here in Norway. There wasn't really anyone that I could continue to learn from, and what I that foundation that I got in the States. I didn't know where how to continue that. So um uh yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's if there are anyone that you can learn from, I think an apprenticeship is a very good idea, to have that kind of one-on-one, if that's possible. Um but yeah, no, that's a good question. What do you tell them? Ask you.
Yeah, well, like you suggested, I always said the ideal is an apprenticeship because to be a successful liturgical artist, you require not just skill, but how to relate to customers, how to operate finances, how to cost, all these practical things. And I've had three and a half apprentices over the last 20 years. And that's one thing to pick up. I don't have to stop and teach them these things, but they can just overhear me talking with the client. Or if I'm costing something up, I can just share that with them and show the approach that I have. So they learn everything in a way that you can't really effectively teach if it's a class. I mean, you can give a talk on costing, but there's nothing like actually experiencing it. But also, I think it's just an ethos of how to work that you can only really pick up in an apprenticeship. So I would always say an apprenticeship is the best. Failing that, some course like the King's Foundation one that you're involved in, there are full-time ones in some places, and then working down the ladder, as it were, snatching 5-day courses here and there, books, but that's sort of going down the scale. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and being willing to invest time and money in it, because it is, time consuming, and it is expensive when you're in that kind of training period. And if you have to travel and take courses and do that, but to see that it's so important and it's worth the effort. Yeah.
And I think I just try to strike the fear of God into people, saying that actually it's really difficult. It's hard work. People are rather enamored of the simplicity, apparent simplicity of icons, but no, I often say it's actually more difficult to simplify than it is to put in every freckle in here. So I try to put people off in a way, in a sense of saying it's so hard to do it well. And if you're not going to do it well, don't bother doing it. To be like someone who can only sing out a tune and insisting that they join the choir. You've got to be a servant to people and think, well, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it well. Yeah. We've spoken a lot about your work on the structure of the icon scheme, but not about the icons. Can you tell us a bit about how, if at all, you plan to have the style, as it were, the form of the painted icons drawn upon the Norwegian tradition?
Yeah, that's the difficult question, because it's easier to talk about the ornaments and what's around it in a sense, because there's so much to draw from. But when it comes to iconography, well, first of all, if you look at, because I think in the UK you have a lot of examples of Romanesque and Gothic from that time period iconography in churches, right?
I'm not
Some,
meaning churches, they're destroyed primarily by Henry VIII, but what we have is primarily remnant in the illuminated manuscripts. So
okay, yeah,
we've got
yeah. So it's
traces
not
of
some,
ornaments, but it's mainly the illuminated manuscripts.
yeah. So it's not something that a average churchgoer would necessarily be familiar with
No,
seeing.
no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's the same. It's the same here. That it's very. There's only remnants left of iconography that you can see in churches. There's certain depictions, but they're from usually later 16 or 700s. But there are so I think that's one thing, that it's not kind of a familiar sight in churches with that kind of particular style of iconography. We have a large church collection and a large collection of altar frontals in Norway that has some beautiful iconography, both Romanesque and Gothic. But I haven't really explored using that style. I've drawn on some of the colors and some elements, but not going fully into that style, because I think it's. But maybe I should try that. But I think it's for the Orthodox faithful, they're more used to the Byzantine or Russian style of iconography, and that's kind of what's become familiar. But it's so I think that's
Not a lot of
one thing
scope
that
there,
there.
probably. Yeah.
What was that?
So there's not a lot of scope, probably, for, as it were, indigenizing the actual painted icons, as far as you can see.
Yeah, not yes, and I think. And also there's but I think something can be said for the colors that the palettes that are used. In Sophrony or in Sister Gabriella's words, he chose a palette that was based on the English light, that was kind of soft and diffused, and he said that you can't use, or he wouldn't use, very strong, bold colors like you could in Greece, for instance, where the light is very strong and very direct. And you could, so I think there's something to be said for that kind of thinking about the light conditions, also in a way of, we're creating icons that's for this place. So how does the conditions that we have around us work best there? And the light here is very, I didn't think about the Norwegian light until I came back from living 2 years in California, where the light is so bright. And I came here and I noticed all of a sudden that it's bluish, this bluish gray light, soft light that I hadn't kind of considered before, because I just, was used to it. But so I think a palette that has kind of, that works in accordance with that, is something that I'm kind of contemplating how to do that, and also a style that's perhaps that has a softness and depth to it, but it's also kind of understated in a sense, or quiet. It could just be my own personal preference, but it's also something about that overall aesthetic that I'm kind of trying to figure out. And I also think it's important that it's not to find it's not I hope we don't find an answer to that question of what Norwegian iconography looks like, or what it should look like, because it should be an ongoing discussion. And what I do is a small contribution to that dialogue, and kind of my contribution, but I hope that it can start a discussion of what yes, and kind of have that that it develops organically, like it has in the other places where you see more distinct style. It's something that happened over a very long period of time. And so I'm aware of kind of not trying to force it, but it's just a contribution to maybe this is something. Yeah.
Is there any community, be it online or people actually can meet together in Norway or surrounding countries, where you can discuss these things together to facilitate the gestation?
Yeah, we don't have it at this point. I know just a few, well, I know a few iconographers in Norway and Sweden.
Oh, right.
But but I think it would be great if we could do that, and get together and kind of see where talk about these issues, because I think now we're working very much just on our own and trying to figure it out. Yeah.
It'd be great if you could do an article in due course, or whatever phase in your doctorate you feel happy to do it, to do an article for the Orthodox Arts Journal, because that's a more international network. But perhaps your friends in Norway and Sweden would be encouraged by that. But I think, as you suggest, it's a process, and the process takes time. But I think it can be facilitated by thinking aloud, as it were, and getting feedback.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
What other things would you like to share with us that we haven't covered about your own work, Hanne?
Yeah, I don't know if I could say that if anyone's interested in learning more or following the process, they can look up Annunciation Parish in Bergen.
Okay.
And we will, or they can find me on Instagram. It's Svane Iconography, Svane. And yes, if anyone's interested in kind of seeing what we're up to, or we're going to start a fundraiser at some point soon, so we'll put out some more information on what's going on. So that's that would be great.
When we publish this podcast, we'll put up links to these things, your podcast and the parish. And when you've got a site for fundraising, perhaps we can add that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, I'm looking forward to our new parish church being finally bought, and God willing, I'll embellish that. Like it's
have you started the process?
Sorry?
Have you started?
Yes, yeah. The solicitors are doing the thing, negotiating. So yeah, it's very exciting. It's effectively a basilica, though it's a Georgian church, but basically it's a basilica. And I've been very interested in the early designs in Rome, particularly the way that they treated the apse of uttermost importance, because it wasn't a dome. The apse was the focus. So how much they packed into that, into the triumphal arch. Mainly the vision of St. John, of the worship in heaven and the New Jerusalem. So that's fascinated me, how the Christ in glory that's inevitably in the center is both the incarnate Christ from the past, the Christ who's present now with us, but also the Christ who is to come. So most of these mosaic apses have sunrise-colored clouds on them. So you're looking at Christ coming to you out of the future. So that's fascinating to me, how much they can pack into it without clutter, pack into the apse side. On God willing, have as frescoes on the north and south walls as well, but the focus will inevitably be the triumphal arch. And not that we have an apse here; it's not a curved apse, but we've obviously got an eastern wall, so that'll be an exciting project.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's been a real joy talking with you, Hannah. And when we post this, we'll have images. If you could send me images of things you think would be good to put up. I was looking before we talked at photographs of the various well-known stave churches. For those of you who don't know about stave churches, understand the word stave comes from the Norwegian word for basically a column that's stuck on the ground. So originally, stave churches were just logs stuck in the ground. We have one or two examples left in England. Later on, they realised that they rotted, so they put them on a plinth, and then later on a stone foundation. But they're all based on the vertical whole log columns normally. But they do splendid. I encourage anyone to look them up on the internet. Wonderful. Sort of Viking churches, aren't they? And sometimes many stacked roofs. They're quite splendid. It's sort of Norwegian Gothic in a way, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. No, they're a very unique feature. And there used to be a lot of them, but sadly there's only 29 left at this point. Because they were at some point seen as old-fashioned and they tore them down and
They
used
actually
the
tore them
material.
down. Really?
Yes,
So when
or
did
they
that
just
happen?
decayed. Yeah.
Yeah. So when was the iconoclasm iconoclastic period of putting them down? Is that
Yeah, I
16th
mean,
century?
yeah, on the top of my head, I can't quite remember, but but it was just because of old age, and if they weren't kept up, and they built something that seemed better at the time, and reused materials, and yeah. So, but it is a very unique feature, and has yeah, they're very,
And they're
very
so high.
interesting.
The most famous ones are really high. So if you got to replace the roof, you need lots of scaffolding. So I can understand people think, "Oh, just blow it, let's let it rot, and we'll build another."
Yeah,
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 they didn't have any machinery to lift the man up to replace the tile. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Lovely, Hannah. Well, it's been lovely to talk
yeah.
and to see you again,
Thank
and
you.
keep
You
in
too.
touch. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.